Stop telling her she's beautiful. Seriously, stop it right now. Every time you say it, you're killing your chances with her, and I'm about to show you exactly why. Here's what's happening. When you tell a woman she's beautiful, her brain goes into autopilot. She's heard it 1,000 times. From strangers, from guys trying too hard, from her last 3 exes. It means nothing. Worse, it makes you invisible. You become just another guy saying the same thing everyone else says. But when you say something different, when you notice something real, everything changes. When you tell a woman she's beautiful, something counterintuitive happens in her mind. Instead of drawing her closer to you, it actually creates distance. Not because the compliment is offensive or unwanted, but because it's so familiar that it triggers an automatic, rehearsed response. Her brain has heard this exact phrase hundreds, maybe thousands of times. From well-meaning relatives, from awkward guys at bars, from men sliding into her DMs, from ex-boyfriends who said it while looking at their phones. The words have been drained of meaning through repetition. When you say them, she smiles politely, says thank you, and mentally files you away in the same category as every other man who's ever approached her with the same tired script. The problem runs deeper than just overuse. Generic compliments about beauty requires 0 effort and 0 observation. You could say the exact same thing to literally any woman you find attractive. There's nothing in those words that's specific to her as an individual. You're not responding to who she is. You're responding to what she looks like, and she knows it. She knows you would have said the same thing if she was someone else entirely, as long as that someone else met your physical criteria. This makes the compliment feel transactional rather than genuine, like you're trying to insert the correct coin to get a specific result. Women who are conventionally attractive have been receiving appearance-based compliments since they hit puberty. By the time they're adults, they've developed an entire psychological immune system against these words. They've learned that men who lead with physical compliments are usually operating from a place of want rather than genuine interest. They've experienced countless interactions where the compliment was just an opening move in a predictable game, not an authentic expression of appreciation. So when you tell her she's beautiful, even if you mean it sincerely, her defenses go up. She's waiting for what comes next, already half checked out of the conversation because she's had this conversation before. There's also an emotional flatness to generic compliments. They don't create any real feeling or connection because they don't reveal anything about you or demonstrate any understanding of her. When you say someone is beautiful, you're making an observation that requires no insight, no attention to detail, no emotional intelligence. You looked at her and your eyes worked correctly. Congratulations. But you haven't shown that you're curious about her, that you notice things other people miss, or that you value anything beyond surface aesthetics. The compliment places her on a pedestal based solely on genetics and grooming, which might feel good for a moment but doesn't create the kind of tension and interest that leads to genuine attraction. What makes this particularly damaging to your chances is that it positions you as just another admirer in a long line of men who want something from her. She becomes the prize, you become the supplicant, and the entire dynamic is established around you seeking her approval. There's no mystery, no challenge, no reason for her to wonder about you or invest mental energy in figuring you out. You've shown your hand immediately and completely. She knows you're attracted to her physically, and now there's nowhere interesting for the interaction to go. The chase is over before it began, except you're the one who's already caught, and she hasn't even started running. The emotional distance created by generic compliments is the opposite of intimacy. Real connection happens when someone feels truly seen and understood, not when they're appreciated for the most obvious thing about them. Every time you default to calling her beautiful, you're choosing the path of least resistance and least impact, communicating that you haven't bothered to look deeper or that you don't value what you'd find if you did. Specificity is the language of attention, and attention is the currency of attraction. When you notice something unique about a woman and articulate it clearly, you resending an unmistakable message that you've actually been present with her. You weren't just scanning her body or waiting for your turn to talk. You were observing, listening, and processing who she is as a person. This kind of focused awareness is increasingly rare. In a world where most people are half distracted by their phones, their own thoughts, or their rehearsed lines, when someone experiences being truly noticed, it creates an emotional impact that generic praise simply cannot match. The difference between saying you're beautiful and saying something specific is the difference between a form letter and a handwritten note. One could apply to anyone, the other could only apply to her. When you tell a woman that you noticed how her whole demeanor changes when she talks about her work, or how she has this habit of tilting her head slightly when she's really listening to someone, or how she makes obscure references that most people wouldn't catch, you are demonstrating that you've been paying attention to details that are uniquely hers. These aren't things you could observe in 30 seconds of looking at someone across a room. They require time, focus, and genuine interest. They prove you're not running a script. Specific observations also reveal your own perceptual abilities and values. When you notice that she asks thoughtful questions instead of just waiting to talk, you are indirectly communicating that you value emotional intelligence and genuine curiosity. When you comment on her confidence in expressing unpopular opinions, you're showing that you appreciate authenticity over agreeableness. The specificity of what you notice tells her something about who you are and what matters to you, which gives her information to decide whether she's interested in you. This creates a two-way dynamic rather than a one-sided performance where you're trying to impress her. There's also a vulnerability in specific compliments that generic ones don't carry. When you point out something detailed and personal, you're revealing that you've been affected by her in a particular way. You're showing your hand about what captures your attention and moves you. This vulnerability invites reciprocity. She's more likely to open up and share something real in return because you've created a space where genuine observation and honest expression are happening. Generic compliments keep everything safe and surface level. Specific observations create depth. The act of noticing specific things also naturally leads to better conversation. When you mention that you noticed how animated she becomes when discussing a particular topic, she can tell you why that topic matters to her. When you point out a specific choice she made in how she presents herself, she can share the story or reasoning behind it. These observations become conversational doorways that lead somewhere interesting, unlike beautiful, which is a dead end that usually just gets a thank you and an awkward pause. Women particularly appreciate specificity because it cuts through the noise of constant shallow attention. An attractive woman might receive dozens of compliments about her appearance in a given week, but she might go months or years without someone noticing that she's funny in an unexpectedly dark way, or that she has impeccable timing in conversations, or that she's generous with encouragement toward others. When you notice these things, you're seeing past the obvious surface that everyone comments on and recognizing the actual person underneath. You're valuing the parts of her that she's actively cultivated rather than the parts she was simply born with. This distinction matters enormously because it acknowledges her as a complete human being rather than just a collection of attractive physical features. When you tell a woman how she makes you feel or the effect she has on you, you're doing something fundamentally different from evaluating her appearance. You're not giving her a grade or offering your assessment of her physical qualities. Instead, you're sharing your authentic emotional response to her presence, her energy, or her way of being in the world. This shift from judgment to experience changes the entire nature of the interaction. She's no longer a painting you're critiquing, but a force that's creating a real emotional experience in you. That's infinitely more powerful because it positions her as someone with agency and impact, rather than someone waiting to be approved of. Consider the difference between telling someone they have a nice smile versus telling them that their laugh makes you want to say funnier things just to hear it again. The first is an observation about a facial feature. The second reveals that they've created an emotional response in you, one that's actually changing your behavior. It shows you've been affected by them in a real way. This kind of compliment carries weight because it's about the dynamic between you, not just about them existing and looking a certain way. It acknowledges that something is happening in the space you share together, some kind of chemistry or resonance that involves both of you. When you focus on impact rather than appearance, you're also complimenting things she has control over and has actively created. Her beauty is largely genetic, maintained through routine grooming, but the way she makes people feel comfortable, or the energy she brings into a room, or how she challenges people's thinking, those are skills she's developed, aspects of her character she's cultivated, parts of her personality she's chosen to express. Acknowledging these things shows you recognize and value her agency and her choices. You're appreciating the person she's decided to become, not just the body she happened to be born into. There's also an element of vulnerability in sharing how someone affects you. When you say that talking with her makes you lose track of time, or that her confidence makes you want to step up your own game, or that the way she sees the world makes you reconsider your own perspectives, you're admitting that she has power over your emotional state. You're not maintaining the cool detachment of someone simply offering their opinion on her looks. You're revealing that she matters to you, that she's having an effect on you, that you're not immune to her. This vulnerability creates intimacy because you're letting her see that she's getting to you in some way. The focus on effect also naturally creates more interesting and memorable compliments. Everyone has told her about her eyes or her figure, but has anyone told her that the passionate way she defends her opinions makes them want to know what else she cares about that deeply? Has anyone mentioned that being around her makes them feel like they can be more authentically themselves? Has anyone said that her particular blend of confidence and humility is something they've rarely encountered? These observations stick with people because they're not generic assessments, but specific emotional truths about the experience of being with them. Women respond to this approach because it makes them feel truly powerful, rather than simply decorative. Being told you're attractive is nice, but ultimately passive. Being told that you inspire someone, intrigue them, challenge them, comfort them, or energize them is active. It means you're doing something, creating something, contributing something beyond just existing in a pleasing form. This acknowledgement of impact satisfies a deeper human need to matter, to affect others, to leave an impression that goes beyond the merely visual. It transforms her from an object to be admired into a person whose presence creates meaningful experiences in others. Constant validation, while seemingly positive, actually diminishes a track because it removes all uncertainty and challenge from an interaction. When you immediately offer a woman your approval through compliments about her beauty, you've essentially laid all your cards on the table. She knows you're interested, she knows you find her attractive, and she knows she already has your attention without having done anything to earn it. There's no mystery about where you stand or what you think. This complete transparency might seem honest and straightforward, but it eliminates the psychological tension that makes romantic interactions compelling. Without any question about your interest or any need to work for your approval, the interaction loses its charge. Women who are attractive receive validation constantly and from virtually everyone. Strangers compliment them. Service workers are extra friendly. Social media provides an endless stream of likes and comments, and men regularly approach them with obvious interest. This deluge of approval becomes meaningless precisely because it's so abundant and costs them nothing. They didn't have to be interesting, funny, insightful, or emotionally intelligent to receive it. They simply had to exist in public with an appealing appearance. When validation is that easy to obtain, it holds no value. It's the economic principle of scarcity applied to human interaction. What's freely and constantly available doesn't create desire. Playful challenge operates on an entirely different psychological mechanism. When you tease a woman gently, disagree with her perspective respectfully, or seem genuinely hard to impress, you're communicating that your approval actually means something because you don't give it away freely. You're establishing yourself as someone with standards, someone who notices when things are actually impressive versus merely acceptable, someone who isn't so desperate for female attention. You'll fawn over any attractive woman who gives you the time of day. This makes your eventual, genuine compliments carry enormous weight because she knows they're not something you say to everyone. The tension created by withholding immediate validation also triggers a psychological response where people become more invested in earning approval from those who don't give it easily. This isn't about being cruel or dismissive, but about maintaining a sense of your own value and standards. When you respond to something she says with playful skepticism rather than immediate agreement, when you challenge her thinking instead of nodding along with everything, when you seem more interested in whether she's interesting than in whether she finds you attractive, you create a dynamic where she starts working to impress you. This role reversal is crucial because it breaks the typical pattern she experiences where men position themselves as supplicants hoping for her favor. Challenge also demonstrates confidence in a way that compliments never can. When you're willing to disagree with an attractive woman or tease her about something, you are showing that you're not intimidated by her looks or worried about losing her approval. You're comfortable enough in your own value that you don't need to manage her ego or keep her happy through constant validation. This comfort with potential disapproval is deeply attractive because it signals high self-worth. People who need constant validation from others are revealing their insecurity. People who can playfully challenge and even risk mild conflict are revealing their confidence. The most effective approach combines challenge with moments of genuine appreciation, creating an emotional rhythm that keeps someone engaged and uncertain in the best possible way. When most of your interaction involves playful push and pull, those occasional moments where you drop the teasing and say something genuinely appreciative land with tremendous impact. She's been working to impress you, wondering what you really think, experiencing the tension of not quite having your approval, and then suddenly you reveal that you've noticed something specific and meaningful about her. That contrast between challenge and appreciation creates an addictive emotional experience that straight validation never could. When you compliment a woman's intelligence, humor, confidence, or the way she carries herself, you are signaling something crucial about your own value system and maturity. You're demonstrating that you're capable of seeing beyond the immediate and obvious, that you evaluate people on dimensions that matter in the long term, and that you're interested in substance rather than just surface appeal. This immediately differentiates you from the majority of men she encounters who seem primarily or exclusively focused on physical attributes. It suggests you're someone looking for a real connection with a complete person rather than someone just attracted to an attractive body. This distinction matters enormously because it indicates the kind of relationship or interaction you're capable of having. Character-based compliments also last longer in someone's memory because they touch on aspects of identity that people have actively worked to develop. A woman didn't choose her facial features or body type in any meaningful way, but she has chosen to cultivate her wit, develop her confidence, sharpen her intellect, or carry herself with a particular kind of grace. When you acknowledge these things, you're recognizing her agency and effort. You're seeing the person she's deliberately become rather than just the genetic lottery results she was born with. This recognition of intentional self-creation resonates on a much deeper level than appreciation for accidents of biology. There's also a practical element to focusing on character traits. Physical appearance changes and fades, but personality, intelligence, and character are relatively stable and often improve with age. When you compliment these aspects, you're implicitly communicating that you're thinking beyond tonight or this moment. You're evaluating her as someone who would be interesting to know over time, not just someone who looks good right now. This longer-term perspective is attractive because it suggests you're capable of depth and sustained interest rather than just shallow, temporary attraction. Compliments about character also invite much richer conversation than compliments about appearance. When you tell someone you admire how they think about complex issues, they can share their thought process and engage you in intellectual exchange. When you mention that you respect how they handle themselves in difficult situations, they might share stories that reveal more about who they are. When you note their particular brand of humor, you create space for more humor to emerge. These observations open doors to genuine connection and discovery, whereas commenting on physical beauty typically leads nowhere conversationally. It's a dead end that generates a polite thank you and then awkward silence while everyone figures out what to talk about next. Women who have substance, who have invested in becoming interesting and complex people, are often somewhat starved for recognition of those investments. They've spent years developing their minds, honing their skills, building their confidence, and cultivating their character, but the majority of male attention they receive completely ignores all of that in favor of commenting on their waist-to-hip ratio or facial symmetry. When someone finally notices and appreciates the things they've Ali worked on, it feels like being truly seen for the first time in a long time. It's the difference between being valued as a decoration and being valued as a whole human being with thoughts, talents, and qualities that extend far beyond the visual. Focusing on character also protects you from coming across as shallow or one-dimensional yourself. When physical compliments are all you offer, you reveal the limits of your own perception and values. You're showing that you either can't see deeper qualities or don't care about them enough to mention them. Either way, you're not presenting yourself as particularly interesting or evolved. But when you notice and articulate observations about someone's character, intelligence, or unique qualities, you demonstrate your own depth of perception, your values, and your capacity for meaningful appreciation of other human beings. Sexual attraction and desire don't exist in a vacuum separate from emotional connection. They're deeply intertwined with how seen, understood, and valued someone feels in your presence. When a woman feels that you truly perceive who she is, beyond the superficial, when she senses that you understand her in ways that others don't, something shifts in how she experiences you. You move from being just another person attracted to her appearance to being someone who represents the possibility of genuine intimacy. And genuine intimacy, the feeling of being deeply known and still desired, is one of the most powerful aphrodisiacs that exists. The mechanism behind this is both psychological and neurological. When someone feels truly seen and understood, their brain releases oxytocin and dopamine, the same neurochemicals associated with bonding and reward. These chemicals create feelings of trust, safety, and pleasure that become associated with your presence. The more she feels understood by you, the more her brain literally rewards her for being around you. This chemical response is far more powerful and sustainable than the superficial attraction generated by physical compliments, which trigger a brief ego boost but don't create any lasting emotional or chemical bond. There's also a profound vulnerability in being truly seen that paradoxically creates safety and desire simultaneously. When you demonstrate that you understand her fears, her aspirations, her contradictions, and her complexities, she has to acknowledge that you're seeing past her social masks and defenses. This creates vulnerability because she can't hide from you in the ways she might hide from others. But if you respond to that visibility with acceptance and continued interest rather than judgment, that vulnerability transforms into intimacy, and intimacy creates a space where sexual desire can flourish because she feels safe enough to be fully herself, including her sexual self. Being placed on a pedestal, conversely, is actually terrible for sexual attraction. When you worship someone for their beauty, you create distance and hierarchy. She becomes an idealized object above you rather than a real person beside you. This dynamic kills sexuality because genuine sexual connection requires equality, vulnerability, and mutual desire between two people who see each other as complete humans. You can't have authentic sexual tension with someone you've turned into a goddess or an idol. The pedestal creates reverence where there should be playfulness, worship where there should be mutual hunger, and distance where there should be closeness. Women consistently report that the most intense attraction they've felt has been toward people who made them feel deeply understood, even more than people who were conventionally attractive or successful. There's something almost magical about the experience of someone Articulating a feeling you've had but never quite put into words, or recognizing a pattern in your behavior that you barely recognized yourself, or understanding why something matters to you when you've never fully explained it. These moments of being truly seen create an emotional high that physical compliments simply cannot generate. They make you memorable, significant, and increasingly necessary to her emotional landscape. The emotional investment that comes from feeling understood also creates a kind of addiction to your presence. When someone makes you feel more like yourself, more fully expressed, more deeply known than you typically feel, you want more of that experience. You start seeking out their company, thinking about them when they're not around, and craving the specific kind of recognition and understanding they provide. This craving, this emotional hunger to be in the presence of someone who truly sees you, is what ultimately translates into physical desire. The body follows where the heart and mind have already gone. Sexual attraction intensifies dramatically when it's built on a foundation of emotional resonance and genuine understanding, rather than just physical appreciation. The women who want you most intensely are the ones who feel most deeply understood by you.